Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our meditation on the attracting of money and financial resources in general for hierarchical purposes. It's something really that is so needed. It seems so simple, but the Tibetan refers to it as the crux of the real problem. It's our sense of values, isn't it? It's how we choose to spend that symbol that human beings acknowledge as having value. It's certainly by agreement, maybe except for gold coins or something like that, it's still by agreement, We value this paper, this symbol, these coins, and now electronically we value certain numbers that are attached to our name. It's really, artificial in a way, but it avoids the old system of barter and exchange. Some people might think that's a good thing, and others will wish to return to the old way. And the Tibetan said, if we couldn't get our attitude towards money worked out, that it would be withdrawn. He didn't suggest what would take its place, but really it's all about desire, isn't it? It's all about this sense of what we really want in a fixed and ongoing and permanent way. And if we have a materialistic consciousness, a consciousness that only believes in the reality of that which the normal five senses reveal, and everything else is seen as not only intangible but even unreal, then we're going to be materialistically minded. There's a lot of problem with the great third ray at this time, and it seems to be out of alignment with the second ray of love wisdom. Now somehow we have to bring these two rays into alignment, just the way we have to bring our personality, generically functioning under the third ray, into alignment with the second ray, which is the generic ray of the soul. Well, let's read a little bit from the Tibetan. This is from the chapter in Problems of Humanity, the problem of capital, labor, and employment. And it's somewhere there from pages 65 to 84. Somewhat much of this problem is buried in the history of our planetary globe and chain as they relate to the now defunct moon chain and the errors that were made there and the lack of success in that particular chakra and manifestation of the planetary logos. It's hard to think that there have been mistakes on the part of great beings, but we learn about what the Tibetan calls the very understandable sin of the Buddha, where he allowed compassion to overcome his maybe better judgment and his knowledge of what the plan really required of him. And the amazing thing, in the next solar system, the obstructing forces will use the great second aspect to thwart the expression of the first, even as now they use the great third aspect, often to thwart the expression of the second aspect of divinity. So a few points from this chapter. He says, it is not useful here to prophesy the uses to which the most potent energy hitherto released for man's helping can or will be put. Its first constructive use was to end the war, and I guess he's probably referring to a war in two phases, hopefully not in three manifested phases, from 1914 to 1945. But of course we're entering a decisive phase right now, which has to be kept on the psychological level. Its future constructive use lies in the hands of science and should be controlled by the men of goodwill to be found in all nations. So here we have, most likely he's speaking of atomic energy, released at that time at least, in the form of a great destructive agency known as the atomic bomb. And his attitude towards it is entirely different than the attitude of those for whom the form and its preservation are the main objectives. It's fascinating to realize what the perspective of hierarchy is as it sees humanity painfully liberated from its bondage by even the destructive use of atomic energy, let alone what might be coming in its right use by science and the men and women of goodwill. This energy must be safeguarded from moneyed interests. Well, right now the risk is that it will not be, and to a certain extent already it has not been. He listed certain governments which could be trusted with the energy, but you know how things spread, and there's all kinds of spying going on, and it's probably inevitable that it is now in the hands of those who are aggressive and notably untrustworthy. It must be turned, he says, definitely into the usages of peace and employed to implement a new and happier world. Well, right now, it seems to be an energy that is used for threats and counter-threats, although there has been much generation of energy, always with a risk that the byproducts of the process will be lethal to humanity in the future. You know, burying these things in the ocean in containers that seem strong at first but eventually fall apart could lead to that kind of pollution which would destroy the possibility of humanity living on this planet. An entirely new field of investigation opens today before science, and one which they have long wished to penetrate. What's that going to be? You know, probably the very deep, meticulous investigation of the structure of matter, the structure of the atom, the discovery of what is called the God particle. Of course, you know, ever more lethal bombs have been made until a hydrogen bomb was made, and the threats from sort of old Atlantean technology are very real. In the hands of science, this new potency is far safer than in the hands of capital, the moneyed interests, or of those who would exploit this discovery for the increase of their dividends. And of course, one invests these days in atomic energy and in nuclear generating plants. So unfortunately, some of the very things that Master DK warned against have taken place. In the hands of the great democracies and of the Anglo-Saxon and Scandinavian races, this discovery is safer than in other hands. Well, nuclear proliferation has occurred, and non-proliferation pacts have only been partially effective. And here he predicts the future, and we understand it. It cannot, however, be kept in these hands indefinitely. Other nations and races are discovering this, quote, secret of release, and the future security of humanity is therefore dependent on two things. So let's look at those two things. Number one, the steady and planned education of the people of every nation in right human relations and the cultivation of the spirit of goodwill. Well, this is suffering greatly at the moment, and there are many now prominent nations when nothing close to this is being offered. The old sixth ray formula, believe as I believe, or you're evil and have to be destroyed. But anyway, if this planned education would go through, this will lead to a complete revolution of the present political regimes, which are largely nationalistic in their planning and selfish in their purposes. True democracy, at present only a dream, will be founded on the education for goodwill. So that's a very important statement. True democracy, at present only a dream, will be founded on education for goodwill. And then the future of the security of humanity, the second point, not only this cultivation of right human relations and goodwill, but the education, number two, the education of the children of the future in the fact of human unity and the use of the world's resources for the good of all. Now how far we seem from that realization and from that type of consciousness. In so many countries, laughably almost, the nationals of the country are taught that they are the very best in the world. So national egotism is occurring, and also the possession of this tremendous force which can be so destructive also. Certain nations, he says, because of their international character and the multiplicity of races which compose them, are normally more inclusive in their thinking and planning than are the others. They are more prone to think in terms of humanity as a whole than are the others. Such nations are the United States, the British Commonwealth of Nations, and the United Soviet Socialist Republics. So the old names are used here because, after all, this was written, more than 70 years ago. Many nations and races constitute these three great powers, the central triangle at the heart of the coming new world. And that's what he has said, that upon what transpires within now Russia, the United States, and I suppose the United Kingdom, and in general the wider social and economic connection with the certain nations that have been related to Britain for a long time, there is a dependency on how things work out with these three great inclusive groupings. Many nations and races constitute these three great powers, and it is a central triangle at the heart of the coming new world. Hence their opportunity to guide mankind at this time, and their innate responsibility to act as world leaders. Russia, the United States, and really loosely the British Commonwealth. Other races have no such inherent capacity. So I think, that's far enough. We're going to go ahead and look at these three next time and their role in preserving humanity, securing humanity, and enhancing the development of humanity. Now, obviously, things have gotten out of hand, and people with a very selfish temperament are in possession of the atomic secrets. There have been certain breakthrough moments for that, and much spying and much theft. But of course, the demanding Fifth Ray group, which had to be somewhat subdued for the last 50 or so years, maybe from 1950 to the year 2000, pretty much, the Fifth Ray group would move ahead, and nothing could stop it. It's very intellectually penetrating and demanding, and naturally then humanity would learn and would be possessed of these powers. Well, you don't give a stick of dynamite and a box of matches to someone in the playpen, and for the purpose of financial gain, that is to a degree what has happened. People want to join the nuclear club. It increases their prestige. It also defends them from regime change, as it is called. So it's serious what we're dealing with here. And amazingly, the industrial military complex against which General and President Eisenhower warned is an alliance between the first ray of power and the fifth ray of science. And the forces of materialism use those two rays Particularly, the financial forces are ruled by the third ray and the seventh ray. So all the hard-line rays could combine for a kind of unholy alliance, you see. And we have to help humanity change its values simply by changing our own values and setting an example. Okay, well, now we get to the point where we're going to ask ourselves certain questions. We're going to acknowledge certain principles which have to do with the right handling of this symbol which we call money. And we acknowledge this old statement and think of it, you know, how it works in your life. To those who give shall be given, so that they can give again. Now that's an infallible law. And I'd like to say and have said, excuse me, kind of morning voice here, you know, to those who give all is given. And this is the dynamic which characterizes the hierarchy, and especially our great teacher, the Christ, and still greater beings beyond. So what do we give, and along what line, and do we notice the replenishment that follows the gift? Now, the questions that we want to ask ourselves, especially if we can be aligned with the soul, what are these questions? So first, let's make sure that we are, in fact, aligned with that inner identity. So the questions answered before the bar of our soul, answered before the judgment seat of spiritual objectivity. If money is one of the most important things needed today for spiritual work, what is the factor which is at present deflecting it away from the work of the hierarchy? Number two, what is my personal attitude towards money? Do I regard it as a great and possible spiritual asset, or do I think of it in material terms? And number 3, what is my personal responsibility in regard to money which passes through my hands? You know, it doesn't have to be cash. So many ways this can happen: cash, check, numbers, electronic numbers, you know. We've moved now from the mineral kingdom through the vegetable kingdom and into some kind of electronic symbolization. But still, in a way, it passes through one's hands, and do we handle it in a really responsible manner, and how could we do better than we are? So am I handling money, as a disciple of the Masters should handle it? You know, and obviously we could always do better. Disciples at our stage of development, think of what was required of the rich young man of the 3rd degree. Now, the Christ was really uncompromising. He says, take what you have, sell it, give the money to the poor, and follow me. So apparently bereft of all of those symbolic resources which protect one. You know, if you have sufficient money, you can live where you like. You're not worried about crime. You can be surrounded by all the toys you need. And everything can be of the highest quality if that's what you choose. You know, money can buffer how the forces treat your life and whether there is danger or not. But of course, a greater danger lurks in the selfish use of money. The old story is the Hydra, the instinctual tendencies of man which lead not towards liberation but towards confinement in form. So Hercules had to fight the 9-headed Hydra, I guess not all at once. You know, there are different lives when, none of us is going to conquer this Hydra in one life. It may seem like we make great progress in a particular life, but it's usually well prepared by our successes of the past. So it takes a long time to face the inner warping, the inner evil, the inner form-boundedness, and we're not successful all the time. But this is an important one, really important. We don't want to be the victim of the Hydra. You know, if a man becomes his dweller, DK cautions against this. The man can become his own dweller. And you can become a destroyer of souls under the first ray, or a deluder or misleader of souls under the second ray, and under the third, a manipulator of souls. So ponder on that for just a moment. This is the whole thing about the right and the left-hand path. And the left-hand path is one of instinctual selfishness, which never allows the identity to expand into what it really is. And if we've passed the second degree, when we have some reasonable control of the astral bodies, still we're not in the clear, not yet. That experience of Jesus going into the desert and probably working with the Christ, maybe it was the Christ, in fact, we have to disentangle the gold and silver threads, as DK tells us. Now the Christ made great strides in the desert. He really put the devil behind him. Those types of accomplishments are not what can be expected of us. But we can significantly overcome the world, the flesh, and the devil, and especially money is concerned with the world. Well, it's concerned with all of them, but certainly with the third aspect of divinity, the world. So let us succeed in overcoming our Hydra, however long it may take. Now we ponder on the redemption of humanity through the right use of money. Well, inevitably we will see that it is not used as it should be. We visualize the money in the world, today anyway, as concretized energy. It's a symbol that has the power to release energy for good or for ill. And this concretized energy is at present largely used for purely material purposes and for the satisfaction where the individual is concerned of purely personal desires. But it doesn't have to be that way. We can visualize money as a great stream of flowing golden substance passing out of the control of the forces of materialism and into the control of the forces of light, out of the darkness where it is spent to reinforce the soul-captivating form, and into the light where that which the divine plan truly requires can be created and manifested. And we're told the Christ and his masters, they do need, in order to reach humanity in the right way at this time, they need the financial resources to do so. It almost seems a preposterous proposition to people who imagine the Christ coming in the clouds and riding a white horse and, taking everything literally, as the great conqueror king who will cast the devil down. But things are different, and much responsibility has to be left to people, and it can't just be solved by the Christ and his hierarchy, because they would be depriving us of the opportunity of the solution. Karmically, it would be a violation. It's just like a parent that continues to do everything for the child and thereby produces a weakling, as Master Moria tells us. Now there is a great prayer here, and if it's said with focused mental concentration and from a heartfelt desire to meet spiritual demands, it can be very powerful. O Thou, in whom we live and move and have our being, the power that can make all things new, the power that can make all things new, turn to spiritual purposes the money in the world, touch the hearts of men everywhere, so that they may give to the work of the hierarchy that which has hitherto been given to material satisfaction. We know how love can be a great motivator for generosity. The new group of world servers needs money in large quantities, of course, for the redemption of humanity. I ask that the needed vast sums may be made available, and may this potent energy of thine be in the hands of the forces of light. So, we're kind of invoking there the planetary Logos and his plan and the means of expressing his plan. And then we see the work to be done by those groups which claim our present allegiance, any group which we know is attempting to carry out the hierarchical plan. And there are many such groups. I saw a video once where a list of those groups just seem to go on forever. It is strengthening to see such an image. And now a very important visualization. Through the creative imagination and by an act of the will, we see untold and unlimited sums of money, that great flowing golden substance pouring into the hands of those who seek to do the Master's work. And of course, this will eventuate. Will that 300-year delay of which the Tibetan warned, will it take place, or will we get on with it? That's the question. So then we say aloud with conviction and with emphasis, thinking of the Christ, He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in His name, and with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. That's an amazing statement. But obviously we're not going to ask that anything selfish be accomplished when we use His name. And we must remember at the same time, and this is a deep occult idea, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. Faith, by some tenuous thread of energy, takes you already into that which you are seeking to see accomplished or materialized. It's a resonant connection with the desired state. Now, we are going to ask the needed money for, we'll name whatever project or group we find doing the hierarchy's work among humanity. We'll ask the needed money to continue promoting that work. So we ask the needed money for whatever really attracts our attention as being worthy and in line with the divine plan and captures our interest. I mean, there's just thousands and thousands of possibilities, but You know, in our particular case, when we're dealing with the United Nations and the various esoteric schools that teach the ageless wisdom, you know, those kinds of things, well, there's just so many possibilities. But let's just say the ageless wisdom, understanding it, applying it, is a great necessity. So, and we can ask, we can demand even, because from the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. You know how very responsible we are. The higher powers, they will send what we need, but we, in the fourth position, the position of the vehicle, have to accept, utilize, apply, work out, manifest what the higher powers give us the power to do. And then, in our creative imagination, we prepare to give our offering to the Christ. Visualize how we are gathered together at the feet of the Avatar of Love, and every week we make some effort, give him then and to his hierarchy what we have saved through a more advanced and advancing sense of values. Because we do work in the name of the great Lord, not as he is understood in so many of the world religions where responsibility is given entirely to him, and faith alone is seen as sufficient without works. It just doesn't make sense. We work with him and we say, we have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. And so we give, and we think of our responsibility to the divine plan. Always the plan comes first. What do we serve? It's always the plan first. Then those whom the plan serves, and then those who serve the plan. And we organize, we plan our cooperation, money, time is money sometimes, whatever it takes, to bring the message of hierarchy to a fairly blinded humanity, which really needs that message. And the Tibetan gives us this warning. He says, be practical and realistic, and know that if you do not give, you may not ask, for you have no right to evoke that which you do not share. Let's think about that. we have to be in an unusual understanding of the word forgiving. Every greater source in universe gives and is for that giving proportionally to the lesser expressions, so they may rise and on it goes in the great chain of hierarchy. We feel loving understanding sweeping through us. Skillfully, we have the fixed intention to express this love to all whom we may contact. And as the Tibetan says, it is the great attractive and selfless agent in world affairs. And we might as well be, quite financially responsible and really keep the books, I guess the karmic lords are pretty good bookkeepers. The absolute extension of bookkeeping. And then rhythmically, because that's where the power is, rhythmically we give that money to our chosen groups or organizations, those who work for the Christ. Let us sound the Om 3 times, precipitating love, wisdom into the worlds of the threefold personality. Friends, it is responsibility which is the first real indication that the soul is taking over. It's not how good something feels or how much the personality may be delighted by such feelings. It is a real grip upon the sense of responsibility. It's a very Saturnian thing. So let us resolve that together. We will recognize what our responsibilities are and, really fulfill them. And we'll be happy that we did, of course. Much opportunity is offered. Much opportunity to stop following the ways of selfish instinct, and Saturn pretty well provides us with such an opportunity. So no matter how you choose to serve and think and meditate, there are particular useful lines through triangles and goodwill, and through the creating of the chalice, collecting the essence of the Christ consciousness, and we will know when that is characterizing our consciousness, our studies should be advanced, and we offer the opportunities for the Moria Federation, and just as a number of esoteric schools offer that opportunity, the new psychology is on the way, and the Seven Ray Institute and University of the Seven Rays has been founded to promote this new understanding of psychology. There's also, let me say, a new PIP 3 on the horizon here. As a matter of fact, it's completed, so just look it up on the internet and you'll find a way to get it, to keep it on your computer, to give it to others, and to take an objective look, at least an increasingly objective look, at your ray chart on which the manner in which you serve is based. So thank you very much for being here. Now we have, I think, a couple of days here where we are not broadcasting the Ask program, and maybe I'll be able to fix a little bit of the iPod issue. But meanwhile, you know, we have the sort of eternal Om going eternally in the background. So thank you very much, and many blessings, lots of love to everybody. And Tuya up in the Little Bear Meditation Center, she sends her love and blessings. Meditation, study, and service, all so vitally important, and they can help the serving group really make an impact over the next 6 years, which are years for humanity of decision and of some degree of danger, lest the wrong decisions be made, the selfish decisions made by the blinded people. Let us not be numbered among them. In essence, yes, but in behavior, no. Okay, thank you, and we'll be talking to you. Bye-bye.